Hey SnapFlash fam! Today's story is about truth, power, and the people who risk everything to bring us the facts. Botswana has marked World Press Freedom Day, but behind the commemorative walk and speeches lies a sobering reality about the fight for a free and fair press in a rapidly changing world. Let's break it down. Artificial intelligence is reshaping media, but who's protecting the truth? In Botswana, journalists are sounding the alarm over shrinking freedoms, low pay, and rising risks. So, how do you protect press freedom in a world of disinformation and digital dominance? Let's find out. Before we dig deeper, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon to stay updated on stories that matter. Stories you won't hear on mainstream media. To mark World Press Freedom Day, members of Botswana's media community took to the streets in a symbolic walk, raising awareness of the critical role journalists play, especially in an age of AI-driven misinformation. But behind the Solidarity March lies a much heavier message. MISA Botswana Chair, Thomas Nkoma, reminded everyone, journalism is evolving, and in this new AI era, verification isn't optional. It's a moral obligation.
We must ask, what happens when technology outpaces ethics? How do we ensure that human editorial judgment does not become casualty of progress? In this brave new world, journalists must remain indispensable, not just for what they report, but for how they apply context, judgment, compassion in telling the stories of our time. As we reflect on these changes, we are reminded of the timeless wisdom of Sheikh Itumile Masire, one of Botswana's founding fathers, who said, and I quote, "The press is a very important component of democratic political system. But the press which publishes without research, verification, can also prepare ground for the demise of any government." I close quote. His words are as relevant today as they were then. In the age of information disorders, where misinformation, disinformation, malinformation blur the lines between truth and falsehood, the responsibility on journalism is heavier than ever. Verification is no longer just a step in the process. It is a moral obligation. But truth-telling comes at a cost. Around the world, journalists are increasingly grappling with media sustainability. That is, shrinking revenue streams, collapsing advertising models, and low wages have left many newsrooms under-resourced and overworked. Journalists are wearing multiple hats: reporter, editor, marketer, just to keep the operations afloat. We must also speak up for those often left out of the media spotlight, printing workers whose contribution is just as critical. We hear troubling reports of rising cases of tuberculosis due to poor working conditions, exposure to harmful materials. These workers are sometimes pushed to meet unrealistic sales targets with no compensation, even when those targets are exceeded. This is not just a labor issue. It is a justice issue. Our government nowadays talks about human rights. Human rights are at the forefront of every human being. They are inalienable rights. So we must also make sure that we protect everyone in the media industry. Ladies and gentlemen, improving wages and working conditions, investing in training and upskilling and exploring innovative models of media sustainability are not optional, they are essential. Governments, media owners, civil society, the private sector must come together to secure the future of journalism, not only in the newsroom, but across the entire value chain. Like I said, salespeople, marketing executives, media is not only about journalists, but the entire value chain. In this regard, we acknowledge and appreciate the new administration's commitment to transforming the media landscape, whether through legal reforms, support for digital innovation, or consultations on media viability. These steps are a sign of progress.
Assistant Minister in the Office of the President, Ma Ipelo Moputien, said it's time to give voice to the voiceless and hope to young journalists hungry for truth. She announced that the government has opened talks with stakeholders to reform Botswana's media laws through a task force already in motion. Her message was clear. High ethical standards and transparency are survival tools, not luxuries.
Ke tla simolla ka a quote from Motlhalefi mongwe gate Flannery O'Connor. The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. The late American writer Flannery O'Connor once reminded us that the truth is not a matter of convenience, it is a matter of principle. And journalism, at its purest, is society's most faithful steward of that truth. That is why we gather here today, ladies and gentlemen, not just to mark another date on the calendar, but to honor a vocation, a calling, and a commitment to a truth that holds power to account, gives voice to the voiceless, and informs the public with fairness and courage, gives voice to the voiceless. For those that are of the Christian faith, you understand and you know from the Holy Scriptures, I believe it is in Proverbs chapter 30, where it talks about the duty of those in leadership roles to give voice to the voiceless. World Press Freedom Day is a sobering celebration. Sobering because we are living through a time where the ground beneath the media is shifting. Journalism, real journalism that is fighting to stay alive amid the rising tides of disruption. From artificial intelligence, shrinking revenues, the competing noise of unverified citizen journalism, and from the growing crises of trust. Yet even in this uncertainty, I find hope. Yes, I sure do. I find hope in the voices of the veteran reporters still pounding the pavement in pursuit of facts. Yes, Auspam. I find hope in young journalists, students, young journalism students that are not hungry for likes, but for truth. And I find hope in conversations this country has began to have. Real, honest conversations about what a free, fair, and sustainable media should look like. The new administration, ladies and gentlemen, which took office following the 2024 general elections, has recognized for democracy to thrive, the media must breathe freely. I'm just borrowing your words. This is why we have opened our doors and our minds to engagement through consultations with key stakeholders such as the Media Institute of Southern Africa, Botswana chapter, and the Botswana Editors Forum. We have begun the long overdue work of reforming the legal frameworks that govern media practice. Now, these conversations have tackled hard questions. The law reform to media sustainability, to how emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence are reshaping the way we gather information. Our Minister for State President has already established a task force with a broad mandate to consult, to listen, and to recommend practical pathways to reform. This task force is looking into how Botswana can embrace self-regulation, not just as a luxury, but as a necessity for professional, independent journalism. The task force, as we know, is also exploring models to support media sustainability, particularly in a landscape where advertising revenue is scarce, very scarce. Competition from digital platforms is fierce and trust in institutions is eroding. But reform must not just come from the government alone. We cannot do this alone. But I can tell you without flinching, there is political will on the part of the UDC government. There is political will. We need your guidance. We're political heads. We're not all wise. We're not all knowing. We need to hold hands and work together in reforming the media in this country. The soul of journalism lies not in laws, but in the conscience of its practitioners. Cannot emphasize that one enough. Integrity is a choice that we all have to make every single day. Every day. It's not hard. Sorry, brother, it's not easy. No, it's not. Every single day, we have a choice to choose the high road. Never easy, but in the end, it really does pay off because you sleep peacefully at night, knowing that one day you will hear, "Well done, you good and faithful servant."
Botswana Media and Allied Workers Union president delivered a scathing reality check.
Plato he was a philosopher. Ona le story no gore le resibula thata rona re go sekolong, the allegory of a cave. Rona gona le banna ba prisoners ba tsentse mo teng ga le gaga, and then mo le gaga le na ba huraletse le gaga, then there was a light. Nako yote bo re banna ba bona the shadows and this light they be gore na ba isupentsiwa. So one of the prisoners managed to escape. Ha tswa kwa nto wana gona light e ntsi ene mo ibile e sa motse sen ya ranza e twela ala mo gore go kwa is an illusion. This is a real life. Abona bunte abona di utsidinte. He went back and tried to tell his comrades gore ha o mo lo bona mo ke maka. There is a real life out there. He received resistance from them. Plato was trying to tell us about reality and illusion. Sometimes illusion, then you think it's the reality, or it's the real life. And that is the life that we as media workers, we as journalists, we are in now, most of us. We are living an illusion. We are living a life of a lie. We think when you are taken for trips, over Kawa, over Cape Town, Religious Festival, that's real life. No. Normally to us, the reality sinks when one of us passes on. I'm standing here today disappointed, Karona. There is a commission at the railway, we are excluded. Yeah, the media in general. I appeared before the committee. This is the reality that journalists are living in. Most of us, we cannot even afford to have even an insurance. We cannot even afford, whereas someone we have been to school with is staying in better conditions. And then the committee invited journalists to come and present, and that once was shared with the group. None of you appeared there. And that committee that has been aid-relayed, there's only one or two journalists. Most of these people are clueless of what is happening in this industry. Because we are living in illusion. Unexamined life is not worth living. Every year we gather here, but sometimes I wonder that, do we really examine our life? Do we really examine the industry that we are working more? Ke rona ba go teng setšhaba se sola gore re ka ntsha nnete. How does a hungry man, monna o tshwereng ke tala, o ntsha nnete ya motho o na le dijo? Our industry now is controlled by the corporate world. Ba re sponsor, ba re heater. And you expect us to write something negative about them? No. Because ki wana ba re heater. They are the ones who are feeding us. Ki wana ba re apesa. Re ba apere. We tried to form a union. We did to call people. Some of our comrades, they were basing on the most of us, we shied away from the union. We would call events, workshops, but they wouldn't come. But no and they don't come to their own event. You can publisher I think you want to. They're not interested in your lives. You protect them. Let us wake up. To the editors, mentor these kids. Most of the young kids, they are leaving this industry because we frustrate them. The male ones, when we see these young reporters, there was once a story, more The Voice. This issue of sexual harassment, The Voice, one of the advertising executive where on FM o tweetira ka go rata mo batho ba bomme ha ba gana ba betsa ka dimpa ma go to ha tweetile mo ka mpa but inele go kwailwe kana shaya go twa tshele, you know, and I was shocked to hear. So this thing I'm going to get held, but there was no follow-up. He's been protected. And it's true, it's happening. The newsroom because of what we are doing. So now, I'm going
Jeannie Olisitse Mogotsi of the Botswana Editors Forum gave a tearful yet powerful reflection.
In economies like ours, which are struggling or slowing down, journalism is often the first to take a beating. With advertising models still heavily dependent on government and corporates. Any budget cuts tend to hit media houses very hard. It is obviously time to adapt and change to the changing times of our lives. Since COVID-19 hit us, we have witnessed a shrinking media space, increasingly dominated by sponsored content, what we call PR. What they mean is we are increasingly leaning towards less investigative journalism because it is more expensive. But it is very critical for democracy. And this also eats away at the very foundation of journalism. As diamond sales have slowed, so too
has the flow of journalism. While some media outlets have adapted, pivoting to new technologies such as AI to help us in these trying times, some have unfortunately had to shut down. We have seen comrades, too many of them, lose their jobs. On this Press Freedom Day, the Botswana Editors Forum acknowledges these daily struggles of journalists and media houses. We remain committed to advocating for better working conditions, better working relationships between the media and government. Most importantly, for policies and regulation that protect us rather than threaten our freedom in an increasingly hostile economic climate. Forgive me. We hope that these engagements and these reforms that government has finally acceded to engaging us will loosen rather than tighten this noose that hangs around press freedom and our very existence. We extend our appreciation to those corporates who continue to meet us halfway despite the challenges. Those corporates that leave just a little. We call it marketing. For us, it's our survival. And finally, we stand in full solidarity with MISA and all the efforts they have made over the years to stand and advocate for media freedom. For we believe it is essential for democracy. And for democracy to thrive, our people will thrive. Together, we reaffirm our commitment to a free. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget this. We must be responsible when we report. The nation looks to us for the right story, the correct stories. We know that today we live in an increasingly noisy world. When we say noise, we mean stories that are not verified, stories that are not real, what we call fake news, misinformation. The country looks to us for the real stories, for the truth. It is on your shoulders to continue telling the real story of our time. Thank you.
With layoffs soaring and journalists forced into freelancing or side gigs, the credibility and survival of the press itself is at stake. Do you think Botswana is doing enough to protect its journalists and press freedom? Should governments rely less on corporate-funded media and support independent journalism instead? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you believe a free press is the foundation of democracy, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps amplify voices that speak truth to power. Botswana's World Press. Freedom Day wasn't just a celebration, it was a warning. AI may be transforming media, but without strong protections, independent journalism risks becoming a luxury few can afford. And in that future, truth loses. Keep questioning and stay informed. Catch you in the next one.
Fearless.